Spin my wheels here until I get back on track of what I'm trying to say. We've looked at so many different variations as to what's going on that science is discovering, what is going on inside of the human body, and then communicating to you the fact that everything is logical. We arrive at a point to find that the word spirit exists, but the actual spirit does not exist. There is nothing spirit. There is nothing spiritual. Spirituality does not exist. Spirituality, spiritual, is simply a word that somebody made up to try and explain the invisible forces of nature that aren't understood. Once you understand what those invisible forces are, this doesn't exist. Right. And that takes you, for instance, somebody wrote me on the internet and says, well, I understand on Is, Ra, and El, I understand is Isis and Ra and El, and that Isis is the spirit, and Ra the mind, and El the body. And that's true, and that's what, spirit, mind, and body together make Israel, and that's fine. But when you reach a point where you understand that, what's that going to do for you? Now you understand that. Now you understand that Israel means when the spirit and the mind come together inside the body, you have God's chosen. Well, that's nice. But that can't do anything for you, other than to say, gee, I understand that. Wonder if now we take this to another step. We move out from this, and we get this to Isis, Pia Mater, in the brain, hypothalamus, Ra, that which is the center of the brain, Amun's horn, in the hippocampus of the brain, the thalamus. El, God. El Shaddai, Elohim, God. El. Electricity. He's saying God is electricity. No, I am saying that if you're going to make any contact with God, and if God is going to make any contact with you, it's going to be done in the ether through electricity. It can't happen in any other way. Does that have any relevance? Well, we'll see. Is it logical? Yes, it's logical. Therefore, a lot of people can't accept it. And that's exactly what. They'd rather read a book of some guy telling them if they think this way and if they say these things, osmosis is going to happen. Osmosis doesn't happen. Everything has a logical explanation to it. How does all of this work? I mean, if you understand, I can look at an airplane and say, gee, that's great. That airplane can fly. But if I was able to understand how it works, I could fly it. I can look at a computer and say, God, these computers, isn't this wonderful nowadays, what this world is coming to? But what good is that to you if you don't know how to work it? What good is it going to do? You look at a computer, so they use it to put a pot on top of it or something, because, it isn't going to do anything unless you understand how to use it. So could it be that this El, Isis, Pia Mater of the brain, Ra, Amun Ra, the hippocampus of the brain, where all memory is, we know that that's in the brain. Hell, could that be electricity? Fundamental particles. You go and you have meditation, or you go to places and they talk about spirituality. Go in next time and talk to them about photons and bosons. What the heck is that? They never heard of this. Those are the things that are actually the essence of what you call spirituality. How do you respond to God? How can you respond to God? You think you can stand here saying, oh, God, do this, oh, God, do that? God doesn't talk that way. Can you, if you have a friend in California, can you sit in your house and talk to that person in California without picking up a phone? Of course not. You can say, oh, Aunt Maggie, I wanted just to tell you that I wanted to come out and see you sometime. And Aunt Maggie, I wanted to let you know that I think you're wonderful. Aunt Maggie can't hear a thing you're saying, but until you pick up the phone. In other words, you have to know what you're doing, don't you? Did you know that through something called cyclic AMP, you can actually communicate with God? You can respond. And that cyclic AMP by science, and look it up in any medical dictionary, is called the second messenger. The first messenger, which is extracellular light, comes down to you, and cyclic AMP, which is the second messenger, gives a response. Well, what's wrong with knowing? So we don't need spirituality anymore because there is no such thing. Now we understand there are photons, there are bosons, there is cyclic AMP, and all of these things operate inside of you to receive the signal coming from what you call God and to send it back. Those are fundamental particles. And on page 71 of the material that I've given you, that you have with you, is a list of all these things. How it works. Is this too far out? What have I told you? I've told you how this all works. What's so far out? I've told you how the signal comes to you, how you respond, and it's all done. Very easy. The fundamental particles carry out their work in the realm of light and electricity. And light and electricity are not necessarily the same thing, but they're very important. Light is non-electric. Electricity allows you to see, but electricity is the way that your mind and your brain function. You can't. Did you ever see those movies where the guy's laying on the thing and the camera goes up to the screen, the thing's going beep, beep, beep. And then there's a line. He stops beeping because there's no more electricity. He has been shut off. Maybe for non-payment, I don't know, but he's shut off. If you don't have any electricity, you can't meditate, you can't think, you can't pray, you have to have electricity. Right? So then everything, every thought, every dream, every idea, every fear, every hope, every prayer is electric. And it says the kingdom of God is within you. And what is his name? El. Elohim. Bethel is the house of God. Okay? The human brain, we know, is the temple, is the human brain. How do we know? Just real quick, I'm going to we go to page 25 of the material that you were given. And there it's right there. Page 25, it's right there. The human brain. The outermost layer, dura mater, squares up with Exodus 26:33, where the outer court is the holy place. And then over on the right side, the innermost layer is Pia Mater. Who is Pia Mater? You've heard of the Virgin Mary or Queen Isis or Fatima or all of these people? Actually, it's Pia Mater. Pia Mater is the most sensitive part of your brain. That's the Holy of Holies, is Pia Mater. And if you look down, between the outer dura and the inner lies a reticulated layer of tissue called the arachnoid. That's the veil or the curtain. So in other words, exactly the way the temple is made is the way your brain is made. Okay? Now, then what are you doing? What's going on? What are we all doing together? What is the job that you're doing when you go into meditation and so forth and so on? What you're actually doing is you're rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem. You're building the second temple. See, the prime traditional concept of the Jews, the children of Israel, the people of Israel, is to build the second temple. That's what the whole tradition, that's why there's all this war and fighting goes on in Jerusalem all the time, because the Muslims have the Dome of the Rock, and the Jews say the second temple has got to be there. That's the whole thing. The fulfillment of God is when the second temple is constructed. The problem with what their concept is, the second temple must be a temple that's built with not hands, and that's what the word says. So you build another building, will you have a temple? There's no building that can be a temple unless somebody walks into it. As soon as a person walks into a temple, into a building, it becomes a temple, because the temple is the brain, is the mind, is the head. It's your head. So what you're actually doing, you are constructing the second temple in Jerusalem. What was the problem? When you recognize what? You recognize what is called in the Bible the abomination, which means the horror, of desolation. In other words, you realize the horror of this being desolate. And your mind, that holy part of your brain, has been desolate because no one goes there anymore. We stop. Look, if you look on page 801 of the Bible, in Matthew chapter 24, Matthew chapter 24 and verse 15, and it says, when therefore you see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place is your brain. And it's desolate. Why? Because people don't go there. Why? Because the religions of the world say, don't go there, you'll open your mind to devils. So nobody goes there. Where do they go? They go to church. You talk about abomination of desolation. But there it is. So the holy place is desolate. And so then your job is to rebuild. How are you going to rebuild it if you don't know how it works? What are you going to do? And you don't. Nobody does. So now you're finding that the invisible force of, excuse me, the invisible force, which is nature, the invisible energy of nature, is not spirit, but it's a logically described power made up of photons, bosons, and something else that we'll look at called, oh, thanks. Where'd you get that? You didn't empty that air, did you? Something else called neutrons, protons, and electrons. So it doesn't make any difference if you want to dwell in spirituality. It doesn't make any difference if you want to think about the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is made up of neutrons, protons, electrons, bosons, and all of this kind of stuff. It's real stuff. It's real stuff. See, when you get up to heaven, wherever that is, which doesn't exist also, what a crude thing to do, but if such a place existed, and you knocked on the door and some guy named St. Peter brought you into the waiting room, and then when it was time for you to see the great God, the guy out in the lobby would say, Photon will see you now. Who? I thought his name was Jesus. Well, you thought. You thought his name was Jesus because you didn't know. What is photon? Photon is light. What is God? God is light. What is photon? Photon creates. What does God do? God creates. Photon has no mass. God is invisible. Photon is supreme intelligence. Light changes direction and all of these things. Photon, light. And what happens? When photon, light, touches the green earth, it is photosynthesis which gives energy to cells and all life bursts forth. Doesn't happen unless photon touches the earth. The earth cannot produce life unless light comes and touches it. Light cannot come and produce life unless there is the green earth. And inside of your body is something called hema group, which is hemoglobin, which is the same as the chlorophyll in the plant. And when the light touches it, the cells have energy. And the energy is called ATP. That's why we have green lights out in the back of our house. Because that is the interaction between the light from above and the green earth creates ATP. And now, when the light comes, which is what you call God, and touches and creates and starts to energize the ATP, it kicks into motion a chemical inside of you called AMP, cyclic AMP. And cyclic AMP allows the cells inside of your body to respond to the light outside of your body. Now, maybe you'll know how to operate this thing. Because you couldn't do it dwelling in spirituality, because spirituality does not exist. You can go to any physics book, any science book, any anatomical book. You'll not find one thing in there about any spirituality being in any part of the body. But you'll find bosons and cyclic AMP and ATP and a description, even to the point where cyclic AMP is called the second messenger. So the abomination of desolation. Why is your holy place, the temple which is your brain, desolate? It's desolate. And let's look at page 847 in the Bible. And in Luke chapter 11, what does it say? In Luke chapter 11 and verse 52, woe unto you lawyers. Who are lawyers? Lawyers are the people you go to church and listen to. They're the Bible scholars that tell you. This is what you have to do. And there's just as many people in the New Age that are just as misleading. They tell you this is what God wants, this is what Spirit wants, this is what the universe wants. They haven't a clue what the universe wants. They haven't a clue what the universe is about. I can take you to any fundamental church and then go to any New Age group, sit down and start talking about bosons, cyclic AMP, ATP, and all this stuff, and they stare at you. Because they'll have no idea whatsoever what you're talking about. No idea whatsoever what you're talking about. And why? Because nobody's ever told them. They dwelled in areas of religion. But look at 11:52. Woe unto you, for you have taken away the key of knowledge. You entered not in yourselves. You entered not in yourselves, therefore there's nobody in the holy place. The holy place is desolate. So we're looking at rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem. See, do you remember when we looked at page 25 of the material there? We saw that the most sensitive part of the brain behind the arachnoid was pia mater, which is tender mother, holy mother. That's in your brain. That's an anatomical part of your brain. This isn't in some prayer book or something. This is in your brain. You don't find this by getting a New Age book or a religious book. You find this by getting a medical dictionary. It's a part of your brain. That's the mother. That's the Holy Mother. So you're rebuilding the temple, which is your brain, in Jerusalem. Now let's look at Jerusalem. Go to page 953. And on page 953, in Galatians chapter 4, 953, Galatians chapter 4, look at verse 25. Agar, Mount Sinai in Arabia, answers to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. That means, Jerusalem, that's over in the Mideast. It's irrelevant. But Jerusalem, which is above, up here, is free, which is the mother of us all, pia mater. Jerusalem is the mother of us all. So we see that we're building the temple in Jerusalem to take away the abomination of desolation, and this is done through your meditation and through your understanding. Now, let us look at the construction of the temple, and let us see. If you look at page 296 in 1 Kings chapter 6, and look at verse 7, it says, page 296, and the house, when it was in building, was built of stone, made ready before it was brought there, so that there was neither hammer, nor axe, nor any tool of iron heard in the house while it was in building. The door for the middle chamber was in the right side of the house, and they went up with winding stairs into the middle chamber, and out of the middle into the third. First thing that's interesting is the temple is built what? Without any sound. It's built in silence. What would be the purpose for that? Could you build a building in silence? Of course not. The book is trying to tell you that this is the temple which is the mind. This is a temple which is the brain. And it must be built in the silence of meditation. It's built in silence. Okay? The door to the middle chamber. Now where's the middle chamber? Take a look at page 10 of the material that I gave you. If you look at page 10 of the material, you'll see that it says the third ventricle is the cavity of the interbrain. The interbrain is the middle chamber. Okay? The door for the middle chamber is the door to the interbrain, which is the third ventricle. See? It's in the right side or the right hemisphere of the brain and goes up with winding stairs. All right? It's in the right side or the right hemisphere of the brain and goes up with winding stairs. All right, now we've showed you, I'm going to need Al, you don't have to cut the lights all the way up, but like you've been doing. I'm going to show you some stuff which is pretty interesting. But I've showed you this before, but nonetheless, let's take a look at it. It's good for people that get the tapes on television. But let's read it again. The door for the middle chamber is in the right side of the house, okay? And they go up with winding stairs into the middle chamber and out of the middle into the third. Into the third what? Into the third ventricle. All right? So let's take a look at the winding stairs. And these are the winding stairs. Right there. Okay? That's the winding stairs. And the winding stairs is the genetic information that is DNA. The double helix. Does it look like winding stairs to you? Looks like winding stairs. It is winding stairs. And that's why that the Hindus call the activity that goes up the spine in meditation Kundalini. Because Kundalini means winding serpent. It's the coiled serpent. And the reason that they say it's a coiled serpent is because the electrical energy goes up in a coiled or winding type of fashion. Okay? So that's basically what the Bible is talking about, is this energy, and all energy which goes up in this winding motion up to the third ventricle, to the interbrain, which is the middle chamber of the brain, and to the third ventricle. Let me just show you, and I know you're not supposed to show these things in church, but nonetheless I think most of you can handle this. Okay? The human nervous and endocrine systems work to coordinate the different parts of the body. A network of fibers called nerves made up of cells called neurons. Neurons fire, it's electricity, okay, which connect all parts of the body with the brain and spinal cord. Messages in the form of nerve impulses carried rapidly around the body using this system, okay? And so the energy goes right up the spine and then impacts all parts of the body with the brain and the spinal cord. And that's why when you're in meditation, the energy moves from there right up that pathway to the brain. And that's basically what this Kundalini business is called, and what it is. And the winding motion that goes up is referred to as winding stairs. All right? Now, you want to turn the lights on for a minute? Now, all of this activity that goes on that we're talking about is electricity. It comes in the form of electricity. Now, did you hand out the the material for today? All of the activity that goes on within the body involving the brain is electricity. Let me show you a couple of things that I had made out, and you'll see on page 73 of this material. All right? And the first thing that I want you to look at when you get the material is the word electric. Now we know of Jesus as the sun god, Amun-Ra as the sun god, Amun's horn, and all of this business, the energy from the solar plexus. So we look at the sun, and we understand something too. We understand that this New Testament is written in Greek. But if you look at that word electric, all right, and it says electric is produced from amber by friction, electron, akin to the Greek elector, E-L-E-K-T-O-R, which is the beaming sun. So there then we have a connection to a Greek word which references the sun. All right. The second thing that I wanted to show you on that page, now that we just can't pass that off, because that is very, very important. That electron is akin in Greek to electra, which means the beaming sun, which actually would be the solar plexus, which is God, the light of the world, which is Jesus, the sun god, Amun, and all of this kind of stuff. Electric, electron. Now, another thing I wanted to show you there was electroencephalograph, which I've given, a system for recording the electric potentials of the brain. And then electrocardiogram, a record of electrical activity derived directly from the cerebral cortex. Okay? So the energy which rises up the spine was called by the people of the East the serpent because it rose up in a serpentine motion. Electricity which passes between the poles of a spark gap is like that. The electricity which you see in lightning comes down in this kind of, swirling motion, like a helix motion. And in ancient times, the electrical force of lightning and things like that was called the great snake. And that's why the serpent was given this title as God and the force of God. So, as we said in the very beginning, God is in Jewish El, El. The universal God, El. Now, I am not saying that God is electricity any more than I'm saying that angels are angles and God, electricity. I'm simply asking us to be mature and realize that these things that we call angels are simply people who are only made visible when we absorb a correct angle from light from outside, which causes an arc in the receptors of the brain, which is an arc angle, so then we can see the people on the other side, or the people at the higher dimension that we're talking and referring to as angels. I'm not saying that God is electricity, but what I am saying to you is God takes that word El, electricity, because only through the sphere and the ether of this energy called electricity is it possible for the human psyche and that which is the universal psyche to communicate. It's done through electricity. If the brain does not have electrical energy, you can't communicate with yourselves, with anybody else, and certainly with God. And if it is not coming down, if the light and the energy is not coming down and touching you, there can be no response. So it all happens through electricity, see. The electricity throws through the 7 chakras, or the 7 seals. Now let me just read something too, which I didn't give you, but which is interesting. And when you look at the number 7 in the Bible, a lot of times people say, well, 7 means divine intervention, or the 7 chakras, or the 7 seals. Think of this one. The neutron has half-integral spin. With the neutron, the nitrogen nucleus can be composed of 7 protons and 7 neutrons. And so there again we have this number 7. When you get into subatomic particles, Albert, all of a sudden you start seeing this number 7 popping up all over the place. And when you look in the Bible and see the number 7, and you start to see, what is the connection here? There's a reasonable, there's a logical connection that we're talking about. Right. Yes. Oh, okay. Wait. Yep.
God is electricity, because electricity, within electricity, there must be magnetism.
Right.
Those two go together, whereas all the other particles are alone.
Right.
In electricity, you must have magnetism.
Very good.
Which is
okay. Einstein. Good. Very good. All right. Real quick. When you get up into the universe, and you look at 7 chakras in the body, the 7 seals, the 7 months, you get up into the Pleiades, which is, what is that, Taurus, the Pleiades, the 7 stars of the Pleiades, which in mythology are called the 7 sisters. One of the 7 sisters of the Pleiades has this name, Electra. That's her name. Okay. One of the 7 sisters, which is appropriating the 7 chakras, the 7 seals, named Electra. See? Electric is from the Greek electrum, which is akin to the Greek electra, which is the beaming sun, and in the center of your brain, at the point of RAM, at the point of the hippocampus, at the point of memory, is that RAM symbol, Ammon, A-M-M-O-N, who is the sun god. So meditation then takes on a whole different approach here. Meditation can no longer be approached as sitting quietly and reflecting. That's not meditation. Sitting quietly and doing nothing. That's not meditation. Sitting quietly and listening to guitar. That's not meditation. Sitting quietly. What is meditation? Meditation is not sitting quietly. Meditation is an internal exercise of the electrical mechanism, opening the pathways which have been closed down from inactivity so that the current can flow, activating the AMP so that you can communicate with God. You are exercising the electrical forces within inside of yourself so that they can carry the current because they've been desolate. If you look, go sometime into a the dictionary, look up the word pineal. You know what it'll say? It's a vestige. You know what it means? Yours is shriveled up. You used to be dynamic. See? In the Bible, Jacob says, I've seen God face to face. I'll call the place Peniel. But you know what? Yours is shriveled up because you haven't used it. I don't mean that, for you individually. I'm talking about you in a general way. People haven't used it. So it's not working. It's not functioning. So the wilderness where no one goes, the planet Earth, there's a connection here. There are a lot of people who couldn't deal with what I talk about, if I say God is electricity, because they're looking for a personality. They're looking for a heavenly Father. They're looking for somebody to say, here, I'll take care of you. They're looking for somebody to say, here, I'll give you the new car, or whatever you want. Just pray to me. They don't want somebody who will say, well, God is electricity. But they don't understand. It is electricity that you have to understand, that has to be active in your body, that makes it possible for you to be healed, that makes it possible for you to touch, that makes it possible for you to understand and for God to understand, for you to communicate. If you're desolate, if here the powerhouse is desolate, how are you going to communicate? You're going to go to church, you're going to sing a song some guy wrote in the 1400s, who cares? Amazing grace, how sweet. And they all stand up. It's very hard. Who's listening to that? Do you honestly think, and here you are, a pimple on the rear end of the Milky Way, and you're singing Amazing Grace, there is somebody that's listening to this? For what? What purpose? On the other hand, if you sit down and forget Amazing Grace and get out of all of that stuff and start generating this dynamic within you and opening the passageways that the current can begin to flow and hit the circuit, which is the computer of the brain, and set up all of these chemicals that are functioning inside of you, and suddenly you start to make contact because you understand what you're doing. See? So we have the photon, which produces the signal outside, which causes a reaction to respond to that extracellular signal. One thing I wanted you to look at real quick is look at page 71. On the material that I gave you. And on page 71, where you look at fundamental particles, no, look at page 72. On page 72, it talks about chlorophyll. Do you see that? Chlorophyll. Do you know, all I'm telling you is this. Look, let's just limit it for a second. If you go, do you want to go to the doctor now and say, hey, I got this problem, and have the doctor says, well, have faith? What? You want the doctor to say, this is what the problem is. This is what caused it. This is how you can get rid of it. This is what you got to take. What if I do all this stuff? It'll go away in 3 days. How do you know? I can prove it. Because he's got the facts. He knows what the heck he's talking about. But this is what you want to do. If you got something wrong with your foot, if you got something wrong with your heart, you want all of these facts, you want all this stuff to be taken care of. But with your whole life, the most important thing, you don't want any facts. You don't want to know anything. You don't want to know anything. You want to have faith. Who do you go to? Do you go to scientists that can tell you how this works? No. You go to these people with robes on, and they're throwing smoke around, and they got stained glass, and all of this stuff, and that's, you say, this is it. Your whole life, the most important thing that you got, your eternal existence, you're building around somebody that hasn't a clue, and it said, let's sing a song. What does singing a song have to do with this? Let's sing a song. Let's all stand up. Why can't you sit down and say, no, I got to stand up? Who's looking at you to stand up to sing a song? Who cares about that? Well, I'm talking about electricity. I'm talking about electrons and neutrons and bosons and all of this stuff that's inside of your body. And you're singing a song. And then somebody say to you, you're far out. Yes, ma'am?
And doctors lots of times do not tell the truth.
Well, doctors lots of times do not tell the truth. Doctors lots of times don't know the truth either. But I'm saying, for the most part, when you go, you want somebody to tell you exactly what is wrong and how you're going to fix it. But what we've been doing is we've been going to find out about what is wrong with the earth, why do we act the way we do, and who do we go to? Superstitious lunatics. Okay. It says chlorophyll. As a molecule of chlorophyll absorbs a photon of light, page 72, its electrons become excited and move to higher energy levels. Do you see? So there is a rational thing going on inside of you. Something is happening inside of you. See? Now, let me show you something and then let you go. Here's the story in the Bible. Here's the story in the Bible. There were two people in a garden. God created the garden. And God said, I think this is very good. I will put a man in the garden. And he put a man in the garden, and he called him Adam. Oh, now I will put all animals in the garden. And I put all kinds of stuff, and it was very good. But I think man should have a helpmeet, whatever that means. So what I'll do, I'll put this sucker to sleep, and I'll pull a rib out of him. And out of the spare ribs, I'll make Mrs. Adam. And I'll call her Eve. You're talking about being an old chunk of coal. Here's somebody, it's a spare rib. Now, that's okay, I think. But you see, the thing is this. There's little kids here, little young children. You send these kids to school all week, don't you? And you want the teachers to work hard. And you want the teachers to teach these kids facts. And you want them to document. You want kids to come back and study and get into the books and learn and understand about themselves and understand. And then on Sunday, you take them into these churches of your own free will and expose them to this lunacy. A serpent told these two people they didn't have any pants on. And you're sending your kid in it. And you wonder why the kids get all freaked out. Why? I don't want to listen. Because they know better. They know you're crazy going to that place, but they don't want to tell you because they don't want to get in any trouble. Your kids go with you to those places just to keep you quiet. The reason you go is because you don't want to offend your mother, or she'll get upset if you don't go anymore. So you keep her quiet, you show up. Because you're going to sit and you're going to tell me the snake told these people to have any pants on? I mean, are you really going to take a little child that's been going to school all week with a very intelligent teachers, very scientific, documented stuff, and then bring him in and said a fish swallowed a guy who lived in a guy's intestines for 3 days, and then the fish puked, and an evangelist came out and saved everybody? And you wonder why the kid doesn't, how'd you like that, Gerard? But when they're outside, out in the street, they talk about you and the church. I said, these people are crazy. I was a little kid and I walked into church and there's a man hanging on a thing with nails in him and blood coming out of him. Who did that? His father. Because he loved you. What? No. Couldn't he have just spanked him or said, hey, you know. I mean, is that a little... For what did I do? Then right away I thought I remember when I stole the Snickers bar in Newark. I said, geez, look at this guy. Holy Christmas. But you know what it made me say? I don't want to go in that place no more. I don't want to go in there. That's something wrong with that. You see? And it's just a carryover of the ancient human sacrifice, you know, and all this kind of stuff. That's what it is. But the fish swallowed the guy. And then you know what happened, boys and girls? God said, I'm going to drown everybody. What a nice, it's your Heavenly Father. I'm going to drown everybody in the world except this guy and his crazy family. So this guy's 500 years building a boat. 500 years built a boat. Took every kind of animal by two. That means fleas and ticks and everything had to get out of it. 2 fleas, 2 ticks, everybody had to get in there. And there was no windows in the boat, and they had elephants going to the bathroom for 40 days. Can you imagine this one? No one. But you're laughing, huh? This is. Yeah, but they looked up. But this is the foundation of your culture, and you wonder why everybody's on drugs. They're crazy. What would you do? But you're teaching your kids this stuff. Pay attention in Sunday school, Gerard. You don't want to miss this. Are you kidding? Then the guy, remember the guy Lot? Oh, that was a good story. I love that story. The men of the town wanted to come out and have relationships with Lot's angels. He says, you're not getting my angels. No, sir. Here, have my daughters. He's a great guy. He wouldn't, boy, I'm telling you, he wouldn't let you touch his angels. So his daughters went out and they had a time. And you know, he was the goodest guy in the world, and that's why God saved him, and he blew up the whole town. Everybody, old ladies, kids, puppies, everything got blown up except this guy. because he wouldn't let anybody mess with his angels. And he went up on the mountain, took his daughters with him. Great guy, God-loving guy, God-fearing guy. When he got to the top of the mountain, you know what he did? Had sex with his daughters. Dad. I mean, don't you think he deserved to be blown? I think so. But you mean, this is your culture. And you know, there are kids in churches all over the place sitting in rooms listening to this barbaric stuff. Well.
Yeah, explain what that was really about.
Yeah, right. Explain what daughter means, and you got to do that.
When he went up into the mountain means when he ascended up into the realms of higher consciousness. Intercoursing with the daughters means intercoursing with the desires of the spirit, not the desires of. But you see, whoever wrote that thought that we were wise enough to understand that we're supposed to take these things as myths, what they are. We took them literally. Right? So let's go for a minute, and I know you want to get out of here, but I want to just show you something. Let me show you something. This is Adam. Okay? God impacts Adam, removes a rib, and all of a sudden, all kinds of stuff happens. There's Eve, and then Adam and Eve come together, and then there's Cain and Abel, and they start having everybody. And before you know it, look, here you are. I mean, everybody starts like, I want to show you something. Okay? Let's do this. Okay? Let me show you Adam and Eve. Would you turn the light down a little bit, Al? All right. Here's Adam and Eve. You see? This is a neutron. A neutron is part of an atom. You have neutrons, protons, and electrons. A neutron is just what the word implies. It's a non-electrical part of the atom. Visible kind of force. The nuclear atoms break up into smaller ones and release neutrons in a process called fission. Elements such as uranium-235, in some conditions they undergo fission. Now, what happens is, when the neutron impacts the atom, it hits uranium-235. Now, do you see anything on that word? Uranium? You're right. That's exactly right. You might be a little afraid to yell it out. But when that element was discovered, it was named after Uranus. Was that an accident? Of course not. What does Uranus mean? Son of man. Heaven. God. See? So what happens then is when this power moves in to this atom, what occurs? Bang. All of a sudden now, you've got two. You see it? And you have two. We'll bring this up a little bit. And now from these two atoms, two neutrons leave, and they're ready to do it again. So here's God. Here's Adam in the story. Understand, please understand, there was nobody throwing rocks at this guy or doing anything like that. This is not a person. These are the elements of the universe showing you how this all began. This was the atom that was split by removing the rib. And then you have now, who's this? That's Adam. And who's this? That's Eve. Isn't that nice? But you see what I'm saying to you? This is how it happens. Let me show you something else. What happens is when you split the atom, you create a chain reaction. Okay? So here's a little bigger thing. Now we have God impacting Adam, and we have Adam and Eve. Now neutrons leave these created atoms and go out and impact now Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. And what happens with Cain and Abel, now you got these two, bang, 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 bang. Now you got four. And these four will go out and impact, and then you'll have 8. And then the 8 will impact, and you'll have 60, and on, and it goes all over the place. A fission reaction within a piece of uranium-235 releases neutrons. Some of the neutrons will collide with other nuclei in the isotope, generating more fission reactions. If enough reactions occur within the substance will undergo fission continually. This means it continues to multiply. It continues to multiply. Okay? And so basically, that's what happened when you removed a rib from Adam, and then everything started to continue the chain reaction. And it has nothing to do with the person named Adam, has nothing to do with the person named Eve, has nothing to do with Cain and Abel. None of these people ever existed. This is talking about the energy of the universe and how all of this began. And then you take this uranium, you want to turn the light up a little bit? When you take the uranium, which is named after Uranus, okay? Now, when you look at this, and uranium-235, understand, Jesus Christ, and the Bible says the kingdom of heaven is at hand. All right? Will you look at page 73 that I gave you today? Did you get page 73 today? Okay. If you look at page 73, it says in History of Modern Particle Physics, electricity passing through gases, that all atoms contain certain particles called electrons. Then you can add a chain reaction, nuclear. In nuclear fission, fission is initiated when a uranium-235 nucleus is penetrated by a neutron. All right? So the neutron in the story was God, okay? And the uranium, the son of God, Adam, was penetrated and a chain reaction began. Okay? Now, go down at the bottom here, and the reason that I put in Uranus because of the word uranium. Uranium, when it was discovered, was named after Uranus, the earliest supreme god, personification of the sky, the sun and concert of Gaia, and all that kind of business. The seventh planet from the sun. See that? Now, go to the very bottom, late Latin, Uranus, from Greek, Uranus, heaven. So when Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is at hand, he's saying the kingdom of Uranus is at hand. Well, if this neutron can impact uranium-235 on the Earth and cause life, what's going to happen now? Why is Uranus positioning itself as the controlling factor in our age? What's going to happen? What's going to happen when this neutron, could it be a neutron star? Could. What's going to happen when this neutron in the sky impacts with Uranus? Now. Is that why it's there? Certainly. And what is going to happen then? An entire new civilization, an entire new life force. That's why you have the green light out. All of these things are going to occur. And that's what all of the scientists and so forth have been. When Albert, can you turn the light down just a minute? When Albert was talking, just let me change the subject for a second, then I'm going to let you out of here in about 3 minutes. When Albert was talking, he was talking about electromagnetism. You see this here? It's interesting. The study of the relationship between electricity and magnetism is called electromagnetism. Electricity and magnetism appear as separate phenomena, but they are in fact two aspects of the same fundamental force. Electric current passing through a wire creates a magnetic field. But what is interesting here is magnetic resonance imaging, low frequency radiation, and a strong magnetic field were used in the production of this brain scan, which is this. And then let me just show you one last thing, which puts all of this in perspective. Sometimes you think when you sing Amazing Grace that somebody's listening to you. Please. Okay, this is your galaxy. All right? You live right out here. This is your house. I mean, you're not even in the middle of it. You're not even in it. Look at all the big ones. This is you out here. So you can't even see it. And you're standing there singing Amazing Grace waiting for somebody to come. This guy's busy with all this important stuff. You're a pimple here, and you're Amazing Grace. Everybody's standing up. Heavenly God, He's coming soon. He said, where? To what? Sorry. But now, when you begin to understand, wait a minute here. I'm involved in this big picture. I mean, I'm involved in the universe is doing this stuff. Scientists are finding the planets. Turn the light on. Turn the light on. Let me show you. Here. You know, you give meditation. You wait for the single eye, and the single eye comes, the pineal gland of the brain. That's what you're all meditating on. But what do you do when God's single eye comes? And then you look in the April edition of National Geographic, the Hubble telescope takes a picture. Look at it. That was just seen. That's God's single eye. And if you look at the center of this green eye, it's a regular eyeball. There's a pupil there. Show the TV again. And so all of this is going on while you're standing in some place singing Amazing Grace. Written by some slave trader. Who cares about him? I don't want to hear about him and his songs. So here we go. So then we find out now, and as we go, and we'll continue, and I'll reveal to you on all of these things and how this works and how you do this and all of this stuff. But that's what your meditation, that's why your meditation is so important. Your meditation is so important for your healing. Your meditation is so important for the universe, because not only are you meditating, and in the acts of meditation and Kundalini, the universe right now is going through the same thing, and it's being discovered by scientists. And while people are going to church, the ones that are preaching the message are the scientists and the astronomers, and nobody's listening to them. Okay? So, I mean, we shared that, and we looked at that, and we got some further clarification of how this all worked. And you actually saw a picture today on the screen right here in a really big show. You saw the picture of what? You saw the picture of Adam and Eve. And there it is. Adam and Eve with heaven impacting. There's Adam and Eve, right before your eyes. See? And you know what? You can't even be skeptical about it. It eliminates skepticism, because it happens. Fact. That's the way it works. But you know what? Every church, every single church, no matter where, up and down the street, you ask them, and they'll teach your little kids about Adam and Eve. Don't you think you should be teaching your little kids about nuclear fission and tell them really the truth of how it happens? Don't you think that would be more reasonable to teach your children the truth? You want to start them off nuts like we are? That's exactly why you teach them that stuff. If I'm going to be nuts, you're going to be nuts. Wouldn't it be nicer to say, look, this is what the... It's amazing. You're going to grow up to be able to afford nerve pills just like your dad. Get your own Librium, kid. That's what we've done. So anyhow, those are the stories. Those are the facts in the case. And as we see more, we get deeper into it. We begin to understand more. And then you find out you start to take some of the romance away from all of this religious stuff. And instead of having romance and singing songs and smoke and candles and all of this stuff, you get into the facts of the truth of the creation and the operation of God's universe. And suddenly, you then no longer sit in the house talking to Aunt Maggie in San Obispo, California. You pick up the phone, you dial it, and there she is. In the same way, suddenly you find out that you can't talk to God through singing songs or sitting with your eyes closed, but then you energize, the current starts to flow, the brain starts to activate, logic circuits in the brain open, the cyclic AMP chemical kicks in, and you're able to respond to God, who is calling you extracellular, responded to from intercellular, and it all is a logic, scientific basis of how life works. And it was all put in the book. And it was hidden in the book because people from thousands of years ago could not possibly understand about atoms, but you can, and so you have no excuse.